I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States. We need it for strategic national security and international security. It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. Every NATO ally has an obligation to be able to defend their own territory. And the fact is, no nation or group of nations is in any position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States. We're a great power, much greater than people even understand. I think they found that out 2 weeks ago in Venezuela. Ireland is actually part of North America, on the northern frontier of the Western Hemisphere. That's our territory. It is therefore a core national security interest of the United States of America. And in fact, it's been our policy for hundreds of years to prevent outside threats from entering our hemisphere, and we've done it very successfully. We've never been stronger than we are now.
US President Donald Trump doubled down his Greenland push in Davos at the World Economic Forum. He stressed yet and again why he wants to acquire Greenland. Trump said he wants immediate negotiations to acquire Greenland, but asserts he won't use force.
We never asked for anything, and we never got anything. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. We were a powerful force then, but we are a much more powerful force now.
Days before his Davos visit, in a bid to control Greenland, Trump had announced tariffs on European and NATO allies. Despite having negotiated trade deals in 2025 with the UK and the European Union. Trump said the countries would pay a 10% tariffs on their exports to the United States starting February 1st. The rate would go up to 25% from June 2026. On the 17th of January, in a post on his social platform Truth Social, Trump wrote that he has subsidized Denmark and other European Union countries by not charging them tariffs. He said, now, after centuries, it is time for Denmark to give back. World peace is at stake. China and Russia want Greenland, and there is not a thing that Denmark can do about it. Trump added, the national security of the United States and the world at large is at stake. And on the 14th of January, the White House posted a controversial graphic on X showing Greenland has two options, US or Russian-Chinese influence. So what is behind Trump's push to control Greenland, the world's largest island? How have Washington's NATO allies responded to tariffs? Why are Trump and Xi eyeing Greenland's rare earth riches? What's the geography of Greenland and its importance? As Donald Trump celebrates the anniversary of his second inauguration as President of the United States, his greatest asset, which is quite apparent, is power. Trump has threatened European countries with higher tariffs if he doesn't get Greenland, and now they are outraged. Will it work in favor of Trump? We explore this and more on WION Wide Angle this week. In an extraordinary escalation to claim the Danish territory, President Donald Trump has threatened a 25% tariff on a slew of European countries, including Denmark, Germany, France and the UK, until the US is allowed to purchase Greenland. This threat by President Trump to impose fresh tariffs has drawn much condemnation from European leaders. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the move was completely wrong, while French President Emmanuel Macron called it unacceptable.
Je crois comprendre qu'il arrive ce soir ou demain, et moi je pars ce soir. Mais comme je l'ai dit, je lui ai proposé, il y a une instance de coordination qui est pertinente et que la France préside cette année, qui est le G7, et donc ça peut être une occasion, mais après je pense qu'il faut nous être extrêmement calmes et rester là où nous sommes, et en particulier sur l'agenda économique, continuer d'avancer pour plus de croissance en Europe, défendre nos intérêts quand les règles ne sont pas respectées, et puis être aux côtés de nos amis danois quand ils sont bousculés. Et c'est ce qui est attendu d'un allié, d'un Européen.
The comments came after Trump announced a 10% tariff on goods from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands and Finland would come into force on the 1st of February, but could later rise to 25%. He added, this tariff will be due and payable until such time as a deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland.
We need Greenland for national security purposes.
The US president's long-standing interest in acquiring Greenland, one way or the other, has become a fixation since the US raid that captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro earlier in January. Trump insists the autonomous Danish territory is critical for the United States' security and has not ruled out taking it by force. Leaders from Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden and the United Kingdom warned in a joint statement that the tariff threats undermine transatlantic relations and risk a dangerous downward spiral, adding, "We will continue to stand united and coordinated in our response. We are committed to upholding our sovereignty."
We must emphasize that Greenland is part of the Western Alliance, NATO, and if there is further escalation, it will also have consequences for the entire outside world.
Great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
After Trump announced his trade tariffs on European countries, EU officials began mulling which measures to use to respond. What the EU can use are three options. Number one, the use of the so-called trade bazooka, a never-before-used instrument. Number two, the implementation of retaliatory tariffs. Number three could be the suspension of the EU-US trade deal, which has yet to come into effect. EU heads of state and government will meet for a summit and coordinate which of those options the bloc will use in response to Trump's threats. The so-called trade bazooka, officially known as the Anti-Coercion Instrument or ACI, is a law that allows the European Union to respond to economic intimidation from non-EU countries. It targets trade and investment measures by countries that are seen to interfere in the legitimate sovereign choices of the EU or its member states. This response can include a vast swath of trade measures, such as tariffs, import and export restrictions, curbs on trade in services, as well as reduced access to banking and capital markets. It also allows the EU to block access to most of the single market while ignoring existing international treaties. Under the current rules, the European Commission can spend up to 4 months investigating any alleged coercion. Another 6 months can be spent negotiating with the country concerned and deciding whether there is a retaliation case. Then, the EU's member states have up to 10 weeks to authorize any action. So the bottom line is, even if the Commission were to pull the trigger now, it could be a year before the bazooka is finally fired.
the so-called bazooka, I really think that should be put on the table to infuse some realism in the Trump administration.
For the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has made it clear he wants to avoid a trade war with Trump, more or less ruling out immediate retaliatory tariffs against the United States.
A trade war is in no one's interest, and my job is always to act in the UK's national interest. That is why yesterday I spoke to President Trump, to European leaders, and to the Secretary General of NATO to find a solution rooted in partnership, facts, and mutual respect. Because that is how strong alliances protect shared interests.
Thousands of Greenlanders carefully marched across snow and ice to take a stand against Donald Trump. They held signs of protest, waved their national flag, and chanted "Greenland is not for sale" in the face of increasing threats of an American takeover. From the small downtown of Greenland's capital city Nuuk, Greenlanders of all ages listened to traditional songs as they walked to the consulate. Others held rallies and solidarity marches across the Danish realm, including in Copenhagen.
Of course we are not for sale. We are a free people. We have always been a free people. We have never had wars. We have togetherness in our mindset. We take care of each other, and that's something actually a lot of other countries in the world could learn from us, that we take care of each other and protect each other. So that's why we're here.
It's very tiring, and it takes a lot of energy. And what we want to use our energy on is just to live here, live with each other, live in peace, and in the country that we love and we respect.
We have always welcomed collaboration with the outside world and with the US, and now we are talked about being occupied or bought. It is unacceptable, and it affects the people of Greenland. As you can see today, it has a lot of resonance with them. They want to show their disgust with this.
President Trump and his allies have repeatedly said that the United States wants to acquire Greenland, a semi-autonomous Danish territory. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that the president wants to buy it. Trump and his advisors have floated many reasons for taking over the territory. Trump even went ahead and wrote in a text message to Norway's Prime Minister that he was pushing to acquire Greenland because Norway did not give him the Nobel Peace Prize. When Trump initially voiced such plans in 2019 during his first term, and at the beginning of his second term in 2025, they were mostly dismissed. All that changed in recent weeks. In the wake of US forces striking the Venezuelan capital and removing the president, Nicolas Maduro, from power, Trump's remarks have echoed with renewed force, augmented by a blatant display of power. While European leaders warn that the crisis over Greenland could lead to the demise of the NATO alliance, Trump has only escalated his threats. Trump warned that China and Russia want Greenland, calling it a serious global risk. He said only the United States can protect Greenland, linking it to US and global security. And that the tariffs are part of strong measures. Trump said the US has been trying to buy Greenland for over 150 years. He stated that many past US presidents tried and failed to make this deal.
Ultimately, these are matters of national security, and perhaps no current issue makes the situation more clear than what's currently going on with Greenland. And all we're asking for is to get Greenland, including right title and ownership, because you need the ownership to defend it. You can't defend it on a lease. Number one, legally it's not defensible that way, totally. And number two, psychologically, who the hell wants to defend a license agreement or a lease, which is a large piece of ice in the middle of the ocean where if there is a war, much of the action will take place on that piece of ice. Think of it. Those missiles would be flying right over the center of that piece of ice.
For det første, så mener jeg, at man skal tage den amerikanske præsident alvorligt, når han siger, at han ønsker Grønland. Men jeg vil også gøre klart, at hvis USA vælger at angribe et andet NATO-land militært, så hører alting op. Altså inklusiv vores NATO og dermed den sikkerhed, som er blevet tilvejebragt siden afslutningen på 2. verdenskrig.
So why might Trump keep turning his attention to this remote, sparsely populated island? And why is it causing tensions with Europe? Before Trump and geopolitics thrust Greenland into the global spotlight, it was already emerging as a travel destination. People were discovering the island behind the headlines, a pristine wilderness steeped in rich indigenous culture. So what is Greenland like? Greenland, the world's largest resource-rich island of 2.16 million square kilometers, is located in the Arctic. It is also the most sparsely populated territory. 56,000 people live there, mostly indigenous Inuit people. About 80% of its territory is covered by ice, meaning most people live on the southwestern coast around the capital, Nuuk. An autonomous or self-governing territory of Denmark, it is also home to Danish and US military bases. Due to the limited network of roads, its 56,000 residents travel by boats, helicopters and planes between the island's towns, which are predominantly scattered along the western coast. In recent years, there has been an increased interest in Greenland's natural resources, including mining for rare earth minerals, uranium and iron. For months, news headlines have reported on US President Donald Trump's renewed interest in acquiring Greenland from Denmark. Trump has described the world's largest island as a matter of national security and has questioned the legitimacy of Denmark's sovereignty over the territory.
I will say this about Greenland. We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
Donald Trump has criticized the Danish government for not doing more of this itself on its own. So, and it comes back to this radar coverage concerning Russian planes over Greenland, and then it concerns submarine hunting, keeping track of Russian submarines in Greenlandic waters and in the so-called GEOC gap, the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap. Those two tasks are very expensive to solve. It necessitates a lot of investments. And I think actually the initial sort of Danish reaction to this criticism from Donald Trump was to say, okay, the US wants Denmark to do more. Well, at least that's something, that's a concrete problem that Denmark could try to solve.
The allure of Earth's biggest island is undeniable. The treasures beneath Greenland's icy terrain have been coveted for more than a century. As the US and the West race to stop China's stranglehold on rare earth production, observers are betting that Greenland will become a new mining frontier. But what is it about this frozen, barren land on the edge of the Arctic that makes it so attractive? Detailed explorations carried out over more than a century have uncovered evidence of important mineral resources in Greenland, including rare earth elements and critical minerals used for green energy technologies. Rare earth elements are not actually rare, but this group of 17 metals like terbium and neodymium are vital for many everyday technologies. Smartphones and TV screens would not work without them, nor would the high-strength magnets that keep green technologies like electric vehicles and wind turbines running, as well as a raft of military hardware from guided missile systems to F-35 fighter jets. Over 60% of the world's rare earth elements are mined in China, and it processes more than 90% of them. Despite the unbridled excitement brewing around Greenland's treasure trove, the process of finding, extracting and transporting minerals and fossil fuels is a multi-layered, multinational and multi-decadal challenge. Trump's assertion that the United States should own Greenland has revived interest in America's historic territorial purchases, which have shaped the nation's map. Will the takeover be military, or are there other ways to do that? We can't say that as of now. One way is purely monetary in nature, which would essentially mean purchasing the land. But the idea of the United States expanding its territory by purchasing distant land is not new. Let's look at some of the US's previous purchases. In 1803, the United States bought the Louisiana Territory from France for $15 million. This acquisition doubled the size of the young nation, adding about 2.14 million square kilometers and securing control of the Mississippi River and vast tracts of land that now comprise multiple states. The purchase of Florida in 1819 was a turning point in American expansion. It was formalized by the Adams-Onis Treaty, in which Spain ceded Florida, and the US assumed $5 million in Spanish debt owed to American citizens. Following the Mexican-American War, Mexico transferred 1.37 million square kilometers of territory under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. By its terms, Mexico ceded 55% of its territory, including many of the present-day states like California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, and others. In 1854, the US bought about 76,845 square kilometers from Mexico that later became part of Arizona and New Mexico for $10 million. One of the most striking examples is the acquisition of Alaska, bought from Russia in 1867. The United States purchased Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million in 1867. This acquisition by the US secured about 1.53 million square kilometers of strategic northern territory that proved vital for resources and military positioning. The 1917 Treaty of the Danish West Indies saw what is now known as the US Virgin Islands bought by the United States for $25 million, in exchange for, in part, accepting Danish sovereignty over Greenland. As of now, President Donald Trump has made it clear his desire to acquire Greenland from Denmark, no matter the damage to NATO or to the US alliance with Europe. What the White House has not spelled out is how Trump's acquisition could take place. As for the Greenlanders, they find the whole idea distressing. Although polling indicates that most Greenlanders support independence from Denmark, a majority of them also opposes the prospect of becoming part of the United States. What remains to be seen is how far will President Trump go in his pursuit to acquire Greenland, and what could be the potential costs for himself, the United States, and the broader international community.